evening and welcome to round 4 of the SSRI GT3 Championship. For round 4 we're finally escaping away from our wonderful European tracks and heading over to the Golden State for a race at Laguna Seca, which should be a fun one. Joined in the commentary box tonight by Patrick Prince.
Good evening. Yes, back to Laguna Seca. For those of you who are followers of the Simsport International YouTube page here, you would probably notice that we did just do a 6-hour endurance race over the weekend, so this is going to be very familiar for many of the drivers.
Yeah, I've already seen quite a few out on track, but quite a few also in differing cars, and we're expecting potentially some differing conditions as we're getting towards the middle of the season. We might see a bit more rain, maybe not as horrific as the Nurburgring, but you can see it looks a little bit damp out there at the corkscrew, and it was stone dry on Saturday, so we'll see if that affects their experiences today.
Well, I think it might well, because it's a tough track in the driest of conditions, and it's easy to loop the car and spin here, although it does require you going slightly offline. Whereas now that slippiness has decided to join itself on the track, on the stuff you want to keep yourself on. So yeah, it's going to be a very tough challenge indeed, but with it being damp and it drying out, and we currently have the last minute of the Silver and AMs doing their qualifying, the times will be ramping up as we move along through this qualifying session. So the pros, we expect to be going a little bit faster and faster by the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing some of our top silvers, Muris there, going for a 1:29.5. He's not crazy far off the dry times. I think here the absolute optimum times are kind of 21s. So anywhere between 21 and 23 is a pretty good time. So a couple of seconds off as we're seeing someone go quite wide on the run up to corkscrew. I imagine we're going to see that quite a bit in the race. It's quite an easy place to lose the car, and in the wet, I'm wondering how close that curb how slippy that curb on the inside is going to get.
Oh, and we also see the return of the Porsche Ferrari, as I think it just went out of bounds. I'm not too sure on that, but yeah, that is a car that gathered a lot of attention in last season's endurance series. As you can see, it's Ferrari everything, but it's a Porsche.
I think it's beautiful. It's beautiful. The famous Italian manufacturer of Porsche, just wonderful.
But yeah, now we're getting the last laps of the silvers and the AMs. I think Johan Planas here, currently sat in 7th, 8/10 off the top. In that, I got to say, a very nice Tic Tac livery. I wonder if they're actually. I can't imagine they're actually sponsored by him, but. You never know. And look at that, he just gains a second being one of the last runners, which means we need to keep an eye on these times now, because everyone else coming through surely will be jumping up as long as they've kept this lap more or less in between the white lines.
Yeah, track evolution obviously matters a lot more in these wet conditions than it does in the dry. We're not just going from kind of fast to optimum, but you can see people gaining whole seconds as they're coming over the finish line. We're going to see exactly how much Bilzerman gains over there. You go. That is about 1.6 seconds gained over the line over their last lap. So either they made a right hash of it, or this line is getting very, very dry. We're going to see how that affects the pros as well as they start to come out, expecting them to go quite a lot quicker.
Evan now the last one out, and he popped himself up to 9th place. So starting on pole for the silvers is Johan Planas, who doesn't actually have the fastest first sector. You can see Tim Muris in the Honda with the fastest sector 1, but stronger later out. And then third in that would be Morgan. And otherwise in the AM class, you have Fredriksson up the top once again on pole, and is that Wouter? Yeah, Wouter in second, and then a little bit further down with a big separation of silver cars is Eanes in the Aston Martin.
Yeah,
but he's still got a nice little bumper below to the rest of the AM drivers.
I think we are expecting to see a bit of a gap at Laguna. The Porsche is very, very strong here. I think it's like a good 4/10 quicker than any other car around this circuit, and that other car is the Honda, which I think then has a couple of tenths if driven by the absolute peak pinnacle of esports on every other car again. So expect to see that Porsche right near the top of the timetables in pretty much any class if the driver has the bravery and the talent to pull that thing round here.
Well, it's nice to see a Lamborghini on track. I can't recall seeing one over the weekend on Saturday. I don't think there was one in the endurance race. But
I'm not sure anyone's taking it for the endurance.
No. Clearly, they. I think we were the only one last season in Snackenson's team to take it, and we didn't do it too nicely, so no one else thought that they'd hop over and join us. And there's the first time from the pros. That's Peter Vernier sticking it on pole, which is to be expected. As we've mentioned, a drying track, these conditions always favour the last car out on track. And with all the pros coming out with the final 10 minutes to go, the track's going to be drying, which will help them post the quicker times. And look at that, Mitchell now with a 1:28.5. He was the fastest, I believe, in practice just before we prepped ourselves to come live. Filippi getting very squirrely coming down Rainy Curve. Just about holds it together, and we'll see what the Porsche can do. As you mentioned, in dry, in perfect conditions, it is about 4 or 5 tenths faster than any other car.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it's going to fare in the wet. Obviously, a bit of a mistake there from Filippi costing him the time, but the track's going to continue to get drier and drier. So that looks like a bad lap, but it's all really going to come down to the very last lap here. The later you can cross that finish line, the drier the track's going to be, the bigger the advantage you're going to have. You want to be the last car crossing that line at like 1 second to go over the line to get your lap in. You want to keep the track as dry as possible. So maybe the car differences aren't going to make a huge difference in qualifying, and that Porsche really wants to be sat on the front row and have those Hondas behind it, not in front of it.
Well, we had similar conditions for the last race a couple of weeks ago at Nords, and I think it took a lot of drivers till the very last lap to finally put in a decent time, because they were pushing a little bit too early before the track had really come to them. So I, as you say, expecting very much the last minute. Everyone wants to be the last car over the line, basically, to give themselves the best chance of getting that fastest lap.
Absolutely. And as these rainy conditions dry as well, you'll see maybe a bit more curb usage. I mean, Laguna's a bit of a weird track in that the curbs, especially through Sector 1, have these massive, massive sausage curbs on the inside that you absolutely do not want to hit, but they also have a lot of banking on the inside of those curbs that you do want to hit in the dry. But in the wet, they could get very slippy. I mean, we saw on the outside of Rainy Curve, Filippi made a little bit of contact with that, and the rear just lit up immediately. So we'll see how brave people are in abusing these curbs, because in the wet, they can be a bit of a scary prospect.
Well, we jump on board with my teammate, who is in a car that he says feels horrible around here. So I don't know how Dimitri's team did so well the other day, but he's currently put it in 4th. And to be honest, I think a lot of these times that we're seeing of the pros further down are possibly incorrect tyre choice. Because in damp conditions, wet is still the favourable tyre, and I think some of these guys went out in dries expecting it to quickly switch over to greasy, which it hasn't happened. So a few you saw finish their lap and instantly park it just after crossing the start line finish, as we now watch Ryan Walker move his way up to 3rd. Mitchell with a solid gap on the rest, bar one. But yeah, I think there was a tyre issue, which is what a few drivers have had to go and switch back onto the wets for.
That would make a lot of sense, and I think we're sat on board with Noit now, who is the only person that I remember seeing in the Nissan on Saturday, and I can tell you that he didn't have a fun time in it on Saturday either. That was sideways through just about every corner I followed him through, and it was glorious to watch, but it wasn't particularly fast, so hopefully he's going to enjoy my car, the Aston, a little bit more today than he enjoyed the Nissan over the weekend.
See, I think you've got the wrong Dimitri, because Dimitri the Noit was the guy pushing it and moving it all the way up to 14th. It was Dimitri Schenk, his teammate, who was the one going a little bit sideways.
It must have been. I think I had a good fight with Dimitri in my first split when he was really screaming through the field, and then I definitely caught that 666 Nissan in my last stint, and it was very, very sideways.
They do have a third teammate, but unfortunately I can't remember his name. So apologies to that man.
I think it might be Verkman. It might be
Dennis Verkman. Yeah, because it starts with a D. That's what you're right. You got it.
All the D's in that team. 2 Dimitris and a Dennis.
Back to qualifying. Nard Cox finally putting himself up more where he was expecting to be. He was down in 30 something just prior to that. Dave Jr. as well, very, very low down indeed, which is just pushing my my previous point about them going on the incorrect tyres. Now you expect him to move right up to the top, still actually only 2 seconds off, still in 12th. That's a bit of a shocker. That the Lamborghini not looking too strong. Peter Veneer, he's in 7th with the Lambo at 1.3 seconds off the top. So yeah, the Lamborghini's not looking brilliant right now.
Yeah, it was one of the cars that I would expect to look quite good round Laguna, actually. I mean, you've not got too much of an issue with curbs here, and I know the mid-engines in general don't like the curbs. There's a big nasty bump on the right of the corkscrew where we're coming up to here, which you might see a couple of people knock against. But generally, that kind of mid-engine rotation is quite favourable here. So I wouldn't expect the Lambo to struggle too much, but it doesn't look like it's having the best of times at the moment.
Might just be the wet conditions. I know the Aston's very favourable in wet conditions, but when you've got this damp intermediate, it's a really tough one to judge, because I think it depends more on the driver, as Sam Spenklink's decided to choose an odd position to put himself in. I'm not too sure.
I think he's waiting to go as late as possible here. I think
his teammates done the same as well. Look at him, and
they're waiting for a gap so they can get over the line at the latest possible second. It's what we talked about before. You want to be one of the last people over the line, and they're absolutely abusing this. You can't really carry a lot of speed in that last corner.
I'm not sure, actually. I get the feeling that they've got their tyres overcooked, and that's a way of just simply cooling them down.
Very possibly. Very possibly.
Because wet tyres in now greasy conditions, if you look in the top right, you can see that has indeed just switched over. Yeah, wet tyres in greasy conditions are going to quickly overheat and gain a lot of pressure. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because the wet tyres have a vast range of working tyre conditions. But yeah, you definitely don't want to start the lap with them overheating. So I think the Team Dark Sky Racing BMW is just thinking a little bit outside the box here.
Yeah, definitely a different choice, and you're absolutely right. You don't want those tyres hot at the start of the lap, for sure. Especially the Andretti hairpin is really punishing on overpressured tyres, because you do a lot of braking, then braking and turning, and then it's not long before you're back on the throttle and turning. Like, it really, really punishes you having incorrect tyre pressures. So maybe it was we'll find out one way or the other. It was a tactical move, and let's see if it's worked out for them, as we see an Aston just taking a trip into the gravel.
That's the 95 of Walker. That's his final lap done and dusted. No improvements there, so he could find himself a sitting duck here. Currently in second, but as we've mentioned, with these track conditions constantly improving, Sem is going to give us a great idea of just exactly what to expect, as Vilcek ends his way up in fourth. Sem only second, still 2/10 off of his teammate's time. What a lap time that must have been from Nard.
I think he had a bit of a gravel dip just coming towards that last corner, and that's probably costing those 2 or 3 tenths, unfortunately. Just a bit of a mistake, but we'll see Alan Crawford all the way up into second place. What a screamer of a lap, as Nard Cox improves by a further 2 tenths.
Only one car left to go now, and that is, I think that is Philippi indeed.
Oh, Philippi's over.
No, because he's already over the line, so the only car left is the 33, and only 19th for Abranosa. So we've got a Nissan on the front row.
I was not expecting to see a Nissan on the front row all season, but I'm very happy that we do. We'll see how this run down to the line goes. See if the Dark Sky Racing can squeeze him out. I'm used to seeing Luca Filippi in that position, but no, it's Alex Crawford today. Certainly going to be an interesting one at turn 1. It looks all mixed up from what we're used to seeing through this, so it's going to be an absolutely fascinating race. It is difficult to overtake here, so we'll see how long they can hold those positions and how hard they can fight for them. Should be good fun.
As you mentioned, a lot of cars out of position. We've got Nelson Abranosa down in 19th, and Nikolai Schroeder as well, who spent a good portion of the early stint of Saturday's race leading the field in 23rd. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a hectic first few laps, that's for sure. That is Absolutely. For sure.
I think Schroeder maybe just having a bit of a hard time adjusting to the Mercedes. I believe he was in the Porsche on Saturday, which is a lot stronger around here, and obviously very different driving style. So perhaps it's that. Perhaps he just had an unlucky qualifying, but I don't think we'll see him hanging around in P23 for very long.
Well, funny thing, I don't know if you just looked at the chat, but Alex Crawford, our man, currently sat on the front row in P2. is scared because I think this is the first time he's ever found himself on the front row. What a lap that was, to be fair to him.
Absolute banger lap. Beautiful, beautiful lap.
Just keep your head down and keep yourself going the same way you have been, and I'm sure you can do some good stuff here, Alex. But in the meantime, as we have a look at the cars, and we can see Dark Sky Racing, Nard Cox and Sem Spenklink first and third on your right. Should we have a run through the standings, Dan?
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
Right, so in the pro class right now, our pole sitter, Nard Cox, is also currently leading the way in the pro standings. And this is also, just so you're aware, everyone at home, this is the halfway point of the season. So Nard Cox leads the way with 145 points. Luca Filippi, I think he's in 5th for this one. He is 20 points behind with 125. And then 3rd place is held by 2 drivers, which would be Sem Spenkelink and Jonas Hackler, both with 95 points. For the silver class, Jitsi Medema leads the way with 100 points, but it's a bit closer here in the silvers, as Adam Locke in his big Bentley is 2nd with 85 points, and then Ike Chews is on 80 as well. So 85 and 80, sorry, yeah. So those three very, very much close together. And then you've got Denise Pope not too far back either, Callum Morgan quite close, Sander Vale. So yeah, there is a lot to play for in the silver class. And then in the AMS, we have Wouter Vrintz in the Lexus with 150 points, Marius Fredriksson with 125 in the Porsche, Arjen van der Linden 3rd with 115 in the Audi. But there's Peter Bocklin just behind, 10 points further down with 105 also in the Audi. So yes, again, a lot going on at the moment at the halfway stage in all the groups, in all the standings.
Yeah, I've just been kind of comparing those standings to where people are on track, and I think the biggest discrepancy here really is in that silver class, because we have Medema and Chews right next to each other in 16th and 17th on the grid, but Adam Locke all the way down in 29th has got some work to do to get on the back of those. We're kind of expecting to see Nard Cox and Sam Spenkelink towards the front of the grid, obviously split by Alex Crawford today, but Hackler down in 8th and Philippi down in 5th. They're a bit lower than we've seen them in previous rounds, so we'll see if they can make some moves, especially Philippi in that Porsche. We're expecting to have some good race pace, especially as it looks like the track is quite dry as we're preparing for the formation lap. So we'll see if the changing conditions throw the drivers off, or if they can find some extra pace.
Yeah, and as you mentioned that, in the AM class, Fredriksson currently, for the race start, will be 6 places higher than the leader in AM, Wouter. So I think Marius is in a great spot just to try and hold, as long as he's in the favourable car here, which always will help. But if he can keep a few cars distance between himself and Wouter, that will always be useful for just giving him that little buffer in the race.
Absolutely, and we talk about 6 cars at some tracks, like, it's 6 cars, it's a lot, it's always a lot, but it feels like an eternity at Laguna Seca. There are not, it is so difficult to pass here. I can think there are maybe 3 or 4 genuine over it taking opportunities without a massive mistake, and even then, you've probably got to have 4 or 5 tenths on the car in front of you to even think about going for a move. So it's going to be really difficult. 6 places is usually a lot to make up, but it might as well be 20 here.
And I think as well, I don't mean to throw you in the mud here, but as you're aware, based on one of the penalties you picked up over the weekend, the cars have different advantages and disadvantages depending where you are on track. And one of them which caught you out was the difference between the Aston and the Mercedes in terms of braking distances, and that's just 2 cars there we're showing a little bit of variance on. But when you've got 7, 8, 9 manufacturers on the grid, obviously you're going to expect different cars to have their different strengths and defenses. I just hope that for Alex Crawford's sake, he's in a car that I don't think many people are going to be aware of its strengths and defenses, which could be beneficial, but it could also be massively detrimental to him if someone thinks that he can brake a lot later than he actually has to.
Absolutely. I think it depends on the driver you've got behind you. If you've got a driver that's kind of a bit more experienced, they're a lot better than I am, that they're going to kind of be thrown off by your differing braking points to them. Unfortunately, if you've got a driver like me behind you, you're just going to get punted and murdered, and the driver behind is going to get a 15-second penalty. But I'm not speaking from too much personal experience here, not too much. But yeah, differing braking points is absolutely a thing. The traction out the corners is a huge thing here. I think the biggest problem I had in the Aston on Saturday was getting that traction out the corners. Even though I could ever so slightly outbrake people, it was never really enough to make a move. I know that the Porsche has amazing braking points here. Obviously, the Honda has amazing straight line speed, as it does pretty much everywhere. But you know, the BMW is a bit of an unknown here. I think, as you say, the Nissan is a bit of an unknown here. Most people aren't going to really know how that car is going to take certain lines, even down to rainy curves. Some people like to go fast in, some people like to go fast out. There are absolutely so many differing lines and braking points. It's hopefully going to be nice and clean in the first couple of laps, but people have to be a little bit careful.
Well, unfortunately for us, it's a dry track, so it's going to be very similar to what we were watching on the weekend, one might think, but it depends whether or not the drivers are doing it. It's just a 1 hour race this time round. Mandatory stop is there, so they will have to come in at the halfway mark. Well, halfway mark's the ideal one if you want to split your tyres evenly, but I'm sure we will see some variation on that from the drivers. Those might want to go a bit longer if they think they've got the pace on those ahead but we're being held up. You want to try an overcut. Some might well try the undercut. We're going to expect a lot of that, but now we see the drivers just getting around the final corner here and prepping themselves for the beginning of race 4, Simsport Racing International here at Laguna Seca.
We'll just wait for the cars to go live, and it looks like they've set off. Away we go. Green flag racing. You want to be on the inside down to turn 1. Are we going to see Alex Crawford get pushed out? He tries to take the inside line nice and early, force the BMW off it. That's a brilliant defence. But it looks like Walker's having a look around the outside. There's not a lot of grip out there, but he is going around the outside of Senspenkelink, trying to hold it there. Oh, he's just touched the gravel.
Oh, no!
And there's chaos back at turn 1.
Oh, no,
there's so much death.
This is the first 3 events, I think, as well. You see the 98 further down at the back. That Lamborghini was pushed one way, then the other. There's the 653 and the 213, the 12 behind. I don't know what's going on at the back, but there is a lot of death. And oh, it's the AM leader that's been caught up in it all.
That is unfortunate. It is one of those corners everyone's pushing, looking for space, and all you got to do is just clip a little bit of gravel on the inside and get caught in, and there's just nowhere to go. I don't think it's the last of the death we're going to see this race, though, so we'll see how people are looking as they come up towards the corkscrew. You can create a bit of a concertina effect here under braking. Hopefully everyone's aware of it and is braking a little bit earlier than they usually would, as it looks like some junior has to take a little bit of evasive action to avoid running into the back of Denoit there. But everyone seems to be going okay so far. As Crawford looks like he's losing places rapidly. What's happening there?
He's dropped a few down. That might just be car differences. He did stay prior to the race. Just before I jumped into the Discord call here, that going down Rainy Curve, his car is not happy at all. It's very, very twitchy. So I'm guessing there may have been a moment or two going down there, which has dropped him now down into P6. But yeah, going back to that earlier incident, it was the pinball of Dave Jr. that seemed to set it all off. We've also had an incident in the final corner. Not sure who's involved there, but incidences galore here on lap 1 of Laguna.
Yeah, honestly, I think we've done pretty well for the most part. To see an accident in kind of the Andretti hairpin and just an accident at the last curb, that's pretty good, especially considering Saturday where we had, I think, an accident at pretty much every corner on the track. But hopefully the drivers will start to settle now, start to figure out where everyone's braking points are, figure out who they can attack, where they can attack, and settle into a bit of a groove, because that groove really matters here. It is one of those tracks where you kind of just get used to it. You get closer and closer to those sausage curbs. You start to find lap time. All these drivers are going to be adjusting to the dry conditions all over again. And we'll see if how bad this Nissan looks through Rainy Curve. That looks all right to me.
Yeah, just has to get on the brakes, I think, at the midway point, which is definitely not the fastest way through, and it's put Leach all over the back of him. And look at the gap that the guys ahead have now gone defensive, but the Ferrari's also sticking his nose at the inside. That is not the right thing to do, and just shoves him back. I think fair play for Hackler waiting on that one, but yeah, you can never put 3 cars into one corner. That's just never going to work out. Now the replay of the start. So here we get a good idea of exactly what goes on. I mean, we definitely saw the Lambo ahead on the first one, but there was incidences galore. So a little bit too tight from the 98, and then just gets collected by one, dodged by a second. We've got mayhem as the guys at the back still throwing themselves in. Something happening further down as well. Look, you can see 3 more cars off. And then another one there in the Wild Things Racing. It's just a bit of a mess.
It's just there's just nowhere to go in the Andretti hairpin. It's really, really difficult. The track is way narrower than it looks, and there is absolutely no grip out on the marbles. And there's so much camber on the inside. It can be really difficult. It looks like you can squeeze people harder than you can on the inside. You absolutely cannot. And I think that's just what's happened there. He's gone, I think this guy has room, and he just didn't, I guess. So it's what it is. I know before you mentioned being on the brakes over the middle of Rainy Curve being a suboptimal line, but I actually think that's just a different way of taking the line. I am like dabbing the brakes at that midpoint sometimes to get that nose in, so I don't think Crawford necessarily made a mistake. Just the Porsche has just had so much grip through that corner, but it's just unfortunate to get turned at the last corner. As you say, 3 into 1 does not go, as we see
oh, and we got someone in the pits as well.
Yeah, I don't quite know what's
Shelikin's sideways. That's a horrible position to be in. And Jonas Hackler is in the pits. Is that 2 incidences in a row? Has he been caught up in an incident with Mick?
I think that's an RCG to the pits as well, because he's not moving.
I'm not sure. Someone definitely drove into the pits while we were on board with Mick in the gravel. Now, Mick's unfortunately had to wait for everyone. Number 4 is moving in the pits as well. I'm not quite sure who that would be.
Confirm Hackler is 189. I'm not sure who the number 4 is.
Tim Neibauer is the number 4. So the Porsche Rari of Team Rocket Scuderia of Tim Neibauer looks to be a little bit damaged there, which is not great. And then on a track as short as Laguna, you're going to be coming out right back in the middle of that pack, but you're going to be a lap down, and that is not good. Yeah,
absolutely. If you especially if you're changing tyres, you're spending 30 seconds stationary. I don't know quite how long the pit lane is, but the lap's only like a 120 round here, like a mid 120 for the slower drivers, and the faster drivers I'm expecting to be doing 122s by the end of the race on low fuel. So, you can quite easily lose a lap if you mess your pit stop up, like a whole lap, and come out basically where your competition is. I mean, there we see Luca Filippi's best lap, 122.685. is about where I'm expecting these guys to be throughout the split at the front. That's not a crazy fast time. I mean, it is a crazy fast time, but I'm expecting them to still go faster yet.
Well, we've had a couple of more issues coming down after Rainy Curve. I saw the 63 was having some problems. The 39 now off at the back as well. Lots of issues. I mean, the trigger point of all the incidences on Saturday for the endurance race was the corkscrew itself. It was people just getting on the throttle a bit too early as you crest the top. And with the imbalance of the car, you just easily loop it, face the wrong way. But this time around, it seems like it's all happening just after that.
Yeah. One of the things with the corkscrew is, you're absolutely right. If you put any power on while you've got lock on over the corkscrew, the car will just turn. You're kind of deloading the front tyres. You want to be putting the power on, but you need to keep your steering wheel straight and let the camber do its job. And look at the grip of this Porsche around Rainy Curve. This is ridiculous. But if you mess up the corkscrew, especially maybe some of the silvers and AMs more than the pros, I guess, it compromises your line for Rainy Curve, which compromises your line for the next turn, and it can really cascade. One poor line anywhere at Laguna can just create chaos. It looks like Mitchell maybe looking for a move around Philippi.
91's off at corkscrew. Ike Chews has had a moment. 79 also off between 5 and 6. Lots of more issues, but the Porsche getting closer and closer. Really clearly, the cork in the bottle is Ryan Walker right now. Luca Filippi all over the back of him, and Mitchell right behind too. Eagerly, both of them just awaiting a chance to jump away, because at the moment it's Nard Cox and Sem Spenklink of Dark Sky Racing just running away with this 1 and 2.
Yeah, and the difficulty here is there is nowhere to overtake yet. Realistically, your next overtaking opportunity is to dive down the inside of the corkscrew, but you'll constantly see people trying to hog this inside line. It's so powerful here. As you can see, the great example, the Ferrari just sticks it on the inside and says, I'm going to take the grip Ippy line. You can go around the outside. Good luck. It is really difficult to hang it around there. And if you can just defend that line over and over again, it doesn't matter if you're 4, 5, 10 slower a lap, you'll probably still end up ahead. You can make a move into turn 5 down here, but you have to have such a good exit from turn 4, as it looks like this Aston Martin just might. Looking for the switch back onto the inside, it would have been a bit of a brave lunge from that far back, but that is exactly how you want to go from moving to turn 5, just demonstrating my point perfectly.
We got the Ferrari of Frank Hopp looking for a move as well, just ahead, but Alexa just slipped back in as that that is a horrible, just before the Rahal Straight, that little kink in the road. We saw a lot of incidents of the people sticking their nose up the inside and not quite working out. And speaking of sticking your nose up, I mean, fortunately for Frank Hopp, it hasn't affected his car. Dealey, though, just got a bit too deep and he's still not moving. I'm not sure what's going on there, but he is static, and I think he may have just left.
Might be an RCG. I would have tried to put my foot down and try and get out of that one. It's a difficult place to do so, but you absolutely do not want to be sat there on the racing line. You're on a blind corner and everything, but let's see what's happened here.
This is Tim Knight
too wide.
So goes wide right back across the track, manages to avoid most people, just a clip on the rear, but is there more to come? Is the question. So collects himself okay there, and the car, because the car doesn't look too bad yet. I can't imagine that little tap being the cause of having to pit. No, we've got another car off independently, just taking too much curb. And then I believe Mick was off on the side here as well later on. But no, that was it. It was just straight into the pits there.
It doesn't look like it was a big hit, but you can go into that wall at some speed out of there. You are flying through that left-hander. You get on the gravel, and it looks like it slows you down a lot. It doesn't. You just completely lose grip and just faceplant into the wall. I mean, I think we picked up 17 seconds of damage from a single wall hit at much lower speeds than that. And if it's the front aero that's damaged, yeah, just take the pit early, get it sorted out, try and make a position later in the race. Maybe that's the decision that's been made there. But it's a difficult track to drive with damage, so I don't fully blame them. But they're going to have to stay out of trouble for the rest of the race now, as we're still seeing this fight go on between Philippi, Mitchell and Walker. Philippi not able to get past just yet, and Leach closing down behind them with the fastest lap of the race. So they're going to have to make something happen soon, because if they keep fighting, there's going to be another car joining the action.
I mean, I'm sure we've mentioned this countless times, the Porsche being such a good hot lapper and one of the fastest cars around most tracks, but when it comes to its racecraft, because of that lack of top-end speed, it just struggles to get past unless the guy ahead really does make a significant mistake. The Porsche against the Aston is probably one of the more favourable opportunities coming out of a corner. As we get a little bit of lag, I think, coming through there from Ryan Walker. He's a bit jumpy. Hopefully that settles itself quickly. But yeah, if the Porsche can just get its nose up the inside, I think it'll have a great opportunity to out-drag the early stages of the Aston as we move on board with our Silver class leader, Medema, who was actually in the lead of Silvers. He has looped it, coming through the corkscrew. It didn't look like the prettiest way to get back on track either. But now I wonder how far down they've dropped based on that.
Yeah, that looked like a big one. I think that will be the classic one that we've just talked about. As we see another car, that's Reinl in the grass. I think probably just hit the curb on the inside of that right-hander and just lost control of the car. It's so easy done. Medema's all the way down, still dropping, I think, 20th place there, so lost nearly 10 positions is pretty brutal, but yeah, as you say, we kind of expected to see a couple of builders.
Oh, the squeeze!
You can't squeeze that hard on the inside. There's just nowhere to go for Abranosa. I looked for an ambitious move, but just close the door, maybe a bit too quick. Well, maybe the stewards will have to have a look at that one. But just unfortunate incident. It's really hard to know how much grip you can take on the inside and how hard people are going to swing in, and it's a classic incident. Abranosa maybe got a bit of damage there as they go wide at turn 3, I believe. And we're going to see what happened to our silver leader here, Medema.
Yeah. So with that turn 1 with the Andretti hairpin, it's a squeeze point, that second right-hander, the second half of it. But yeah,
too much lock.
Beautiful case of slightly too much steering angle. Chuck the throttle on.
Yeah.
Bit angry with the car, clearly. He's put it in the wall twice. Distaste for the front of that. But there you have it. They're back on their way. Could have been worse. But
I think he was just dislodging a Tic Tac from his container by driving it into the front there. You know, sometimes it gets stuck, you got to knock the container a bit. That's probably what was going on, I'm sure. But yeah, no, it's easy done. It doesn't need to be a lot of lock when you put your foot down. As I say, the front tyres just completely unload, and yeah, the car will just run away from you. It's gone. So it looks like a classic instance of what's gone on there. And yeah, absolutely right. Before, as you say, the Andretti hairpin, massive squeeze point, and sometimes you squeeze too much, and that's what happens, I guess. And we're going to see I think this is Friedrichsen we're riding on board with, who is keeping up with the tic-tac colleague of Medema. This is Planas in another tic-tac BMW, I believe. Just trying to hold off Friedrichsen as Tractor looks very juicy in the Lexus behind. These two cars couldn't be any more different in terms of their strengths. The Lexus a rocket in a straight line, the Porsche rocket in the corners. Mitchell looking for an ambitious move around the outside.
He's on the outside though.
It's difficult to make it stick around here.
Has to go very defensive from Walker, and because Mitchell was on the wrong side of the track, that's unfortunately going to mean the move's not going to get done. But can he go for a switcheroo? He tries to go up the inside. It's a questionable spot to make the overtake. We saw a drive-through given for that the other day, and so I think he wisely pulls out of that one.
Yeah, it's difficult to cross that pit lane. That pit lane is so obviously like really near the track, and you're going to see people want to defend that inside line as Philippi smartly did. But you also want to be on the inside line, right? You kind of want to juke them out and get there, but there's also a big bump there. So even more so than just being a smart decision to back out of the throttle, and as Steve Frintz has also looped it, I believe, at the corkscrew. We've lost another one.
He's caught up in issues right at the start, so he was all the way at the back. He was in the bottom three cars after the first corner, but he'd managed to work his way up a few spots, and clearly just a little bit too eager on throttle again, pushing a bit too hard. And I mean, Fredriksson all the while is loving this. He's sat about 8 cars ahead of anyone else in his of his fellow AM drivers. He doesn't really have to push. If someone makes a dive up the inside, he can happily pull out of that and just know that as long as he keeps his car going in the right direction, he's in for a great shout of making up those points that are required for him to try and knock Wouter off the top spot.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It can be very tempting when you're in this kind of position to kind of sit back and relax, but also you need to think about, he's in a Porsche at Laguna. This is his best chance to make up some real positions, and what you don't want to be doing is getting stuck behind a car that's not that quick here, because you're never getting back past again. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Friedrichsen defend that position with a little bit of vigour, or at least make sure the person behind them are travelling faster. As we see Muris seems to have lost it. I'm not quite sure where that is. I think that's just outside a rainy curve, probably hit the gravel trap on the outside. You dip a wheel in there, the car's going to go around you as Locke tries to send his big boat round the outside too, but Muris not having any of it. See if Locke gets a bit of a run on him. Looks like he might. Is Muris going to defend the inside? Is Locke even going to get the run? No, the Honda's just pulling away. Who needs a tow anyway? Off he goes. The Honda just drives away. Bentley not having the funnest of times here.
Yeah, well, the Bentley's a car that doesn't get much love, like the Nissan, as we were mentioning earlier. I think this is the lone Bentley on track. I think a lot of people avoid it for this specific reason. If you look on board, you see you sit on the opposite side of the car. I've got to say though, I don't think it's as hard to figure out as you might think. I did have, for whatever reason, what was it, on Sunday I was driving the old Bentley just for a bit of fun.
Yeah, I felt sick riding on board with you. I completely disagree. I could not get used to the opposite viewpoint.
But being in the driver's seat, it really didn't take me too long to figure it out, to the point where I then started driving the Ginetta GT4 car, trying that too. So I think it depends on the person more so than anything else, because if you do like the car, the different viewpoint is not really going to be that major by the time you get to it. But it looks like he's had a few issues, or he's just being very, very friendly to the leaders, because this is, in fact, your top 6. And oh my gosh, there's someone facing the wrong way, which has caused a few troubles, caused the Bentley to go very, very much offline, and split this group up ever so slightly. Mitchell just struggling to get back on, and it's Peter Bockland who's still trying to get himself back on track, being very, very kind to everyone else about it. Did get himself out the way ASAP, but maybe just reversing would have been the safer play.
Yeah, I think Adam Locke may not have been spooked by that car on the right, and was probably a bit more spooked by Mitchell going down the inside of that left-hander. You can go too wide through there, but it is scary. And I don't think Mitchell was the kindest to him, but Adam Locke wisely kind of backing out and just saying, I don't want to crash with you here. Unfortunately for him, just ends up in the gravel because of it. As we see Philippi still trying to make a move on Walker. You can see the pace difference as the Aston really has to brake hard around that corner. It does not like to coast, it does not like to carry minimum speed, it wants to be on the brake as long as possible, and then straight back on the throttle, and the Porsche is carrying so much more kind of minimum corner speed through that corner, having a really difficult time finding any traction on the exits to get past. It's a difficult place to be in, but Walker really doing a fantastic job of holding it up, doing some amazing laps, dealing with back markers very well. This is going to be a tricky place to overtake. We're going to see the same issue again. You really want to back out as a back marker well before this left-hander. You do not want to go too wide through there, but equally, you don't want to lose too much speed because you want to be carrying as much speed through there for the long run up to the corkscrew. You don't want to compromise your own line, your own race for the sake of someone coming through, but everyone's being very well behaved, I must say.
Yeah, it's very great respect shown as the Porsche looks for the move up the inside, but the doors close just about at the point where the Porsche thought they might have a chance. Philippi still struggling. We've got a BMW back marker ahead. Very wisely gets out the way. Very nicely done from them once again. The back markers do seem to be giving a lot of respect to the race leaders, which you do like to see, but at the same time you need to remember that they also have their own race to do. So they're compromising their own race at the moment for the sake of the viewers. And
that's a big dive.
Porsche has gone for it, and he's really overdone it. I think
that was ambitious.
Great evasive action. Great evasive action, but you could tell he'd completely misjudged his braking distances there, had Luca Filippi, and now finds himself right in front of Ryan Leach, who was previously on a bit of a tear. Now that also frees up Mitchell to have a go at Walker.
Yeah, and I think Mitchell's going to have a bit of an easier time of it. A bit more of a traction advantage on Walker than the Porsche maybe has. I was going to say that maybe we see a move on the inside of Rainy Curve there, because it did look like the Porsche had a pretty significant traction advantage. We talked before about there's different lines through Rainy Curve that you take as different kind of styles of driver and different styles of car like to take different routes. The Aston does like to sit in the middle of the track a bit. So I wouldn't have been surprised to see Philippi with maybe a bit more patience. You can see there, taking the apex way later than some of the other cars behind. But I expect Mitchell to maybe try and get early on the brakes here and get a bit of a run, but Walker's just pulled a bit of a gap there. Yeah, Mitchell too late on the brakes, so Walker's going to get the run, and Mitchell's not going to get a chance this lap, but that's where I'd be looking for the overtake if I was in the Honda. I'd be trying to make sure that I hit that apex as neat as possible, maybe compromise your braking on the way into that slow in, fast out mentality, because that Aston's not quick in a traction zone at all, and that Honda does look pretty spicy in one. So if you can get a good exit, great, but I will say that the leaders, Nard Cox and Sam Spenkelink, are not running away as quickly as you think they might.
No, the gaps, I think it's now 3.2, but a couple laps ago it was still at 2.6, so Ryan was definitely getting the hurry up from Filippi while he was sat behind. But as you spotted, even though Mitchell just ran wide, I think he's just picked up the fastest lap of the race on his last one, or am I wrong there, as he already had it? But at the same time, he already had it, so apologies there, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. But looking at these two, Sem Spenkelink and Nard Cox, Sem's closing the gap now. It was at 1.9, it has just come down by a full second. So we could see a little bit of a battle for the lead with 38 minutes to go, so I don't know if we'll quite see anyone thinking of pitting yet, but if you were going for a short first stint, we've done 20 minutes, it might be an idea.
Yeah, I think if these cars start to get a bit closer, we might see them fight. We have seen them try and get past each other at the line before on the very last lap, so I wouldn't be too shocked to see these two not team orders it and have a bit of a fight, and could be good fun as Mitchell's creeping ever closer to Walker in this turn one here.
Yeah, Philippi behind.
Pace yet.
No, it's all about setting up the move. As we've mentioned, these two cars very, very different. You've got the Honda that has just much greater torque out the corners and probably a better top speed too compared to the Aston Martin, but the Aston Martin is just a lot more planted, so it's a lot easier to put the power down in comparison. And right now I think Mitchell is just getting a bit too eager when it comes to trying to outbrake and just set up a move. As we see, speaking of moves, Wouter Bilsma going up the inside of Planas, and Medema also making his way back through the field. The Tic Tacs are currently in tow of each other, 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And it looks like Wouter may have gone a bit deep. The first tic tac of Planas all over the back of him now. They may have just switched places, but doesn't look like it's the end of that battle there.
No, absolutely not. It was absolutely textbook, that move from Billsmet. That's exactly what you want to do. You want to get on the inside and force the other car to go around the outside like a trashy white girl, because it never works.
Ooh.
But Planas just goes wide, gives the place back to his teammate.
Team orders.
Absolutely, yeah, team orders, of course. Just don't give up the place to the Wild Things car, closing you down at speed as Natafas Mill thought about the dive into the corkscrew, decided against it at the last minute. Probably the right decision, but no, it's so easy to go wide there. Especially easy if your teammate's going, go on, just give me the place.
Oh, he's hit the curb, but he's caught it.
What a catch.
Evan behind just clips the curb on the inside, has a proper drift from the rear, but does actually end up losing a spot to Schroeder. But, I mean, it's a lot better to lose one spot than to end up sideways and lose 3 or 4. So yeah. I'd take that if I was him.
I think Evan is going to end up in exactly the situation that I ended up in Saturday, sat behind a Mercedes which just has better traction and better top speed. It is just going to be sat here for a while. It is really difficult to overtake that Mercedes unless you can get them in the corners in the Aston, and I can tell you it's really hard to get down the inside of anyone anywhere at Laguna Seca. So we'll see if that affects Evan's race. Hopefully Schroeder has the pace to start pulling him onto the back of these BMWs and they can start working together, because it's going to be a hard race for Natafas now to try and make those positions back after that mistake.
Oh, and moving up top, Walker's disappeared. He's down to 7th. So what's happened there?
Car 95 is just coming down the pit lane. They're coming down the start-finish straight now. He's not pit. He is still on track.
It's a decent gap though. So there's been something happen, whether it was a mistake or whether there was a bit of contact in an overtaking move. We are currently unawares of it, so we'll have to maybe wait and see that. But a mistake from Mitchell put Philippi all over the back of him. Problem for Philippi is this is likely going to be the hardest car to overtake round here.
Yeah, and it's only half a mistake. It's really difficult to find the pace with half a mistake, but here we've got a replay. We're going to see what happens. It looks like it's at corkscrew. Is it just too much power too soon? No, that looks nice and clean. Still got the line.
Curb strike.
Curb strike. There's a little bit of a sausage on the inside. Give it a nibble. No, fine. Gravel's fine. Nibble? Maybe? Nibble.
Oh, yeah, curb. There's a curb.
Yeah, that's one sausage.
Oh, and he goes sideways. Does he put... Oh, that's a big hit too.
That is a big crunch.
No. I expect this car... So we must have just missed it as we jumped on board. This car's surely going to be in the pits this lap.
You'd think so.
Where is he? Walker. So he'd be coming. Yeah, he's coming down through turn 10 now. You'll
just
see him
in the background
there. Does he go into the pits? Keep an eye on the track map. No, he elects to stay out. Interesting.
Maybe that aero damage isn't too bad.
Yeah, I'd jump in now, but his strategy must have dictated to go long. I mean, it doesn't look too badly damaged, realistically, for the size of the impact, which is quite surprising.
I think the Aston deals with damage fairly well, depending on where you get the damage. We picked up some front aero damage on Saturday, and I think I lost about half a second a lap to it. But that was like 38 seconds of damage. So if you've got less than 20 seconds of damage, I think you're probably fine. You probably just want to get your head back down, get back into the groove. The big thing is don't let that get into your head, because it's so easy to make a mistake around here. And they can just snowball so quickly. You make one mistake and you get angry about it, and you make another mistake and another mistake. It's easily done as we see Schroeder come into the pits, which might free up some of those silver drivers to start making moves on each other.
How to teleport to the pits. Someone went off at corkscrew, off to the right, which to me is an interesting one. We saw the Ferrari do that a lot actually on Saturday, as looks like the team is... I believe that's on a back marker of Locke, who... Is that Locke, or have we actually got two Bentleys?
No, that is definitely Locke. That is car 63. That is definitely Locke.
How can Locke be only 5 places down and yet a whole lap down when the times are that close? I think we got two Bentleys. I think we're mistaken.
Have we got two Bentleys? I'll check pit wall. Oh, we'll just have confirmation.
Yes.
We do have two Bentleys. It must be the Bentley of Simon Bartlett that we've seen there. That is car 35 that we saw coming through. He's currently sitting down in 33rd position. That would make more sense. Apologies. There we go. What a beautiful car.
10 in the pits right now. Is that one that went in through choice or teleported in? Car 10 is Dave Jr., so that one's teleported in, I think, unless this is just strategy based. It's hard to judge because I didn't really get a chance to see who was the one off in the top right, so we'll keep an eye on that, see if that is Dave just doing his mandatory pit stop around the halfway mark.
This would explain our confusion as the Bentleys with their identical liveries. This is where we've been thrown on the broadcast. We've been deceived. But no.
The twins.
The twin Bentleys. They're on either side of the track to deceive you. You think you're coming past Adam Locke. It's like, no, haha, it was Stephen Bartlett the whole time. Brilliant stuff. I love seeing those teammates with very, very bright, very broad Bentleys. You certainly wouldn't miss them. As we're seeing some of the silvers start to pit now too. So after this round of pit stops, we'll see where people get kind of shaken out to. None of the leaders opting to pit yet, as Philippi's set a purple lap at some point in the last couple of laps. We must have missed that one, but really starting to get after Mitchell now after that mistake. Clearly, Philippi didn't mind about the mistake, didn't let it get to him. Head down, get after Mitchell, but let's see if he can get past. I wouldn't be surprised to see Philippi the first person in the pits.
Yeah. But unfortunately for the two BMWs, Mitchell and Philippi are on flyers because they are only a second and a half away. As it looks like we've had a multiple car collision on the final corner. Car 8, I think, is one of them that's involved there, which is...
that's Crawford.
That's Crawford. So I think the 8 and 4 may have got together somehow. We'll see if anything comes out of that. That's a bit unfortunate if so. But yeah, speaking of the leaders, that gap... I think it's coming up slightly. Maybe the Beamers are just... The BMWs just doing a bit of IR saving. I don't know if that would be something you'd want to do. It depends what the... whether there is a mandatory pit stop. They've gone together, holding hands. Dark Sky Racing, hold hands into the pits.
Absolutely.
Pull into their pit boxes. What are the odds that they're right next to each other? They are pretty much right next to each other as well. Lucky for them that you don't get held up by the other, because they don't share pit boxes in this case, but no strategy from one trying to outdo the other. And we'll see in that case then what these guys can do now that they are in the lead. And here we go. So it's Tim Neibauer and Alex Crawford on the final corner. Porsche just a bit too eager, a bit too late on the brakes, and a little love tap from the Porsche.
I would love to comment on that, but this is exactly what I did to somebody on Saturday. Sorry, Morgan, if you're watching. I do apologise again. But it's easy done in these cars. The Porsche is so much better on the brakes. Wasn't expecting the Nissan to brake that early, and it's difficult to avoid. It is. And that's my copium for my 15-second incident. But yeah, easy done. As we see the BMW start to roll out of the pits. And you can see, I talked about before, like just what a huge difference it makes going into the pits here. I'm just looking for car number 7 on the track map to see where they've come out as the BMWs come out behind the Wild Things car. And there you see it's almost a full lap.
Mitchell's gone into the pits. He's gone for a dive. Philippi now, depending how much fuel he's got, it'd be interesting to see just how much he can push with a bit of clear air in front of him, because he does have a little bit. He's got at least a good few car lengths to the 44 just going around the Andretti hairpin in front of him.
Yeah, you want to get as much time out of this now as you can. A bit of clean air. The BMWs are not in clean air.
Yeah. Look at this. The Lexus right ahead. I believe so. I believe Denise is the one in the Lexus with the Wild Things Racing. Yeah, it looks like... Well, Sam's actually jumped Nard in the pits somehow. So that somehow has happened. I mean, they did go in holding hands, and whether Nard gave him a little push, just you have your fun in the limelight. But it looks like Sam's finally going to make a move on the back marker, but I'm sure that's going to have held him up a fair bit. So where is he? Where's Mitchell? Where is Mitchell in all this? There he is. There he is coming out the pits.
It's going to be very close over the line. I think that
there's another
Mitchell
back marker
might just
ahead
have it as the back marker's going to hold him up. Yeah, there you go. Mitchell
Mitchell's
move over the line.
Mitchell's done the undercut, so the back marker's proving troublesome.
Yeah. And as we say, it's difficult to get past back markers here. That is a very compliant back marker. That was very polite of them to get out of the way there. It's a difficult time to let go of the throttle. I think that Nard is going to get the worst of that as we see Walker into the pits now too. But yeah, I think that it's now going to be interesting to see where Philippi comes out, because if Philippi has been putting in some absolute screamer laps and has the fuel to do it, you want to be staying out as long as you can. Looks like still got clean air. Philippi's just come out of turn 3, so going for at least one more lap. See how much pace Philippi can find in that Porsche. Last lap was a 122.6, absolutely not hanging about, but is it quick enough is the question.
The last lap for Sam Spenkling was a 129. That's how much, about 7 seconds cost, as we see. Oh no, a stop go 30 for Evan. That'll be speeding into the pit lane. As long as they don't go careering in from an incident, they're all right. We see the 212 with a yellow flag, but I mean, Sam's got a mission on his hands right now. He's currently really giving it a good go on the back of Mitchell here, which is our theoretical leader prior to any more pit stops. But saying that, it all depends on Philippi, who did pull out a 22.6 on the last lap, and you'll see him going through the final corner now. Looks like he's still going to stay on track, so I'll keep you updated just to see exactly what time he gets out there.
Yeah, I think this Porsche is in the dream situation for a Porsche. The best way to race on a Porsche is not to race. It's just a hot lap.
22.3.
That is absolutely rapid. That
Sem's
is on
was a
pace.
23 dead, and Cox was a 22.8, and Mitchell's was a 28. So the 29 would have been the pit out lap. So
yeah,
Mitchell was the second faster out the pits. So it's this lap now that properly counts for Regan Mitchell. But again, he's got back marker to contend with, who's gone a bit wide. And is there a bit of contact there? Somehow sneaks through on the inside, allows Sam Spenkling also to go around the outside, but it does close the gap up between the two once again.
Yeah,
I still think these guys are going considerably slower than Luca Filippi up top, though. So Filippi doing just a perfect drive right now, that if he was to pit, I think he'd come out 4 or 5 seconds clear at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I would be running this as long as I could get away with before I started running into back markers if I was Filippi. You want to be taking the clear air as much as you can. Mitchell, probably with equal pace in that Honda. I don't think the BMW is as fast on raw pace in these dry conditions as the Porsche or the Honda, which are absolutely rapid around here. If Filippi can just keep driving a fantastic race as he comes into the pits now, we're going to get to see exactly where he comes out compared to to Mitchell and these BMWs. Has this clean air running been enough? Has the fighting between Mitchell and Spenkling held them up enough, as they're still just coming into Sector 2 now, heading up towards the corkscrew?
You've got the car wrong. That was Ryan Leach. That was second place. Philippi's still in. But similarly, Leach was pulling out faster times than those guys. I think he was about 5 or 6 seconds off of them prior to any of these front leaders doing any pits. So he could well have closed the gap too onto these guys.
I think this would be a good benchmark for what we're looking at for Filippi then. Where Leach comes out the pits is really going to dictate where Filippi comes out, because Filippi was right on the back of them. We can judge a 5-second gap. Let's see where Leach comes out, and we can use it as our marker for when Filippi comes into the pits. He's still sat stationary, so it looks like he's coming out quite a bit behind.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that's going to be a close one whatsoever. But Mitchell now actually pulling out faster times than what Filippi's doing. He's into the 22.6s, a 22.5 for Sam Spenkling, and a 22.4 for Nard Cox.
Absolutely.
These guys properly, and to say that like they're getting through 2 or 3 back markers a lap at the moment as well.
Yeah, they're just like a knife through hot butter at the moment through these back markers. Absolutely smoothly dealt with. I think the back markers are doing a fantastic job of getting out of the way. I mentioned before, this is a really, really hard place to let people through comfortably. I mean, you can see it there that you want to be taking the line as best you can. You don't want to be going side by side through this left-hander if you can help it. And they're just lifting out. They're being so kind to these front runners. So yeah, I mean, credit to the front runners for doing the pace that they're doing while navigating back markers, but as much credit, if not more, is deserved by these back markers for getting out of the way in the way that they are and allowing us to watch this fantastic race between these three.
Philippi did respond though in the last lap, and he did get a 22 dead. But as we've just had our attention drawn to the top right hand of the track, the top right hand corner, 30 minutes, heavy rain. How long has that been up there? Because it does look like it's got cloudy on track. Whether or not we will have some sprinkles of rain prior to the race finishing, as we only have, it is 21 minutes to go, but the problem we have is with the low grade forecast that is Kuno's Assetto Corsa Competizione, we only get what's coming in the next 10 minutes and what's coming in the next 30 minutes and what the weather is now. So whether or not it's changing in between the 10 and 30 minute marks, say if it changes in 15 minutes and it does get rain, we don't yet know that, because all we've got is that 10 minute counter and the 30 minute counter. Here we get a little cinematic shot of the sky. It does look a little bit grey.
It's looking a bit grey to me. That is very much reminding me of my home in Northern England on every day of every year. No! Massive accident behind it. It looks like he picked up a leader in the process. Has Nard Cox been damaged by that massive spin out from the Ferrari of Hop? That was a big accident.
I think somehow Nard Cox sort of just brushed it off like he wasn't there. Amazingly enough, the BMW, I mean, he did take a little bit of a thwack, but managed to keep it going in a straight line. But I think we've just also seen, two in a row. Sam Spenkelink is all over the track, and suddenly the BMWs have, no fault of Nard's, but Sam's just had a bit of a mare too. He's lost his brother in arms and looked like he was missing him.
Yeah, clearly. The one time these two aren't running right next to each other on the track, they it's getting a bit lonely out here. I'll just run a bit wide. Accidentally, but good chance for Mitchell to run away in that Honda. Look at the laps. Philippi 6 seconds ahead, and he's pitted now. So while all that was happening, Philippi pitted, and he's 1.6. Sorry, not quite as much, but Philippi pitted and came out ahead. Oh wow! So he has. He's actually actively on track as well. But he's not that far up the road. It looks like there's been a bit of team orders here for Sem to come through. Well, look at the front of Nard Cox's car. That looks a little bit battered. Yeah, he has picked up a bit of damage for sure. There's more yellow flags behind them as well going on. And here we get a replay of exactly what happened. Did he hit this inside curb on the left and then run out wide? Too much pressure. I think he's just got a bit scared from Regan Mitchell ahead, and then... Ooh, that's not a good rejoin. But brilliant save from Nard to have kept it on track and lost minimal time. But that damage is not going to be beneficial to them now. And that is going to cripple the front aero of that Ferrari as well, which really needs it. But the Ferrari's a strange one when it goes off track like that. It has absolutely no grip when you go off track, but the second you get on track, it tends to snap like that. And it's the case in any situation where the Ferrari tends to lose grip. It tends to snap back to grip. So I wonder if that's what's happened there. Got to rejoin thinking they'd have a little bit of grip, and it just was not there. Interestingly enough, Dimitri Denoit up in P5 now. That's a name we haven't really seen much so far today. Just quietly driving his own race. Now all the way up in 5th place. Having a brilliant race, showing off for the Aston Martins, currently the leading Aston Martin, even overtaken Ryan Walker, who was up in 3rd a while back, but then did take that little whack on the wall in the just before the penultimate corner. Yeah, we're seeing Aston Martin's running 5, 6 and 7 with Vervat although still yet to pit, in a really good position, and the highest placed silver that is yet to pit is also an Aston Martin of Morgan. So they're clearly doing well for these kind of mid-pack drivers, the Aston Martins today, but at the top, it's absolutely no surprise to see a Porsche, a Honda, and the two BMWs of Sam Spenkelink and Nard Cox battling out for those top positions for sure. But we'll see if Denoit can make anything happen. I think it's going to be very difficult to catch these guys in an Aston Martin round here, but, miracles happen, and we'll see how it plays out as these... if the rain starts to come especially, we know the Aston is fantastic in the wet. So we'll see. Maybe some of these Astons holding out for that. So the people still to pit, Vervat, Abranosa, maybe praying for that rain to come quickly. I don't know. I think at this point, we've got the 98. Nikolai Schroeder off in a rather awkward spot. I think maybe hit the curb on the inside, a little bit of a left, right, left, and
didn't quite manage to catch the car, as now we do have Suki Vervatin and car 14 also off in the background. So we've got our current leading silver car in the last of the pits. Bartlett's sped into the pit lane. Oh no, that's a stop-go 30 that he's going to have to serve now. Unlucky for the big Bentley there, as he's just driven past an accident of the 217, I think it is. That's Frank Hopp again having troubles this time round in the Andretti hairpin.
Yeah, still very easy to go wide there. And there's no grip on the outside, so if you start to go too wide, it's very difficult to catch the car, bring it back, and probably has a little bit of damage from before, so definitely not making his life any easier. It looks like Nard Cox is starting to lose the back of Sam Spenkeling now. That damage is pretty severe, presumably, for him to be losing this much lap time. Alex Crawford making a run down into the Andretti hairpin now. See if he picks up any places from the pit lane. I imagine that he will, as he's got Nikolai Schroeder all over the back of him, though. So we'll see how this battle plays out as we go along. But he's also got the leaders catching him as well. So about to be a lap down shortly as Philippian Mitchell, who I think has just put in the fastest lap of the race, is starting to close him down.
Yeah, well, we've got, that's a 21.7 from Regan Mitchell.
Yeah.
What a time that is. I mean, it was a 21.9 from Luca Filippi, so only 2 tenths, like a tenth and a half really in it between them. But in comparison now, if you look back to see what Nard Cox did for the last lap, it was a 23.2, and even Sem Spenkelink only managed a 22.9. Yeah. So I think, unfortunately, for the BMWs, their day may be done. And yet, still no change in the weather. That might be their one saving grace if it did suddenly bucket it down. But when you think with 10 minutes to go, it's still only going to be cloudy. And if you also consider the fact that there's currently 5 minutes of possible wet time as of the next 5 seconds, I don't think that rain's really going to have much of an effect on the outcome of this race.
Unfortunately not. I think it's just coming too little too late for these BMWs. And we talked about it at the start of the race. We expected the Porsche to be by far the quickest car around here. We expected the Hondas to be pretty competitive, and I just don't think this is the track for the BMWs, unfortunately. It's a bit too twisty, it's a bit too reliant on getting that steer, that oversteer almost, around some of these corners. So I do expect them to fall off and continue to fall off the leaders if the leaders can keep putting in really solid laps. You can be the best driver in the world, sometimes the car difference just makes too much. And we've seen it at other tracks as well. It will kind of wane as we go. Some tracks the Honda will just be absolutely dominant, some tracks the BMW will be absolutely dominant. It is just the way that it is. Philippi needs to be driving this kind of race if he wants a good shot in the championship. This is probably the best track on our calendar for him to win a race, and so far he's just driving it perfectly.
Yeah, he's doing a great job of managing his way through the back markers as well, keeping good distance of them, and a lot of respect shown from the back markers. I have to say that they're doing a great job, and look at that, it's just perfectly executed from both sides, which is causing minimal time loss, I'd say, for both as well, which is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where even if you don't have the raw pace, you still got to push. You still got to try and give yourself the opportunity if the race comes to you. Anything can happen. Philippi could make a mistake. You don't know. You have to drive your best race. But right now, Philippi just not making mistakes, just driving very quickly. Maybe Mitchell will get onto the back of him. We'll see. But right now, just dispatching back markers with ease. Look at this. It's like they're not even there. It's a beautiful race.
Yeah, well, actually, the last 3 minutes might be a bit dicey. Rain in 10. Rain in 10.
I don't think
that'll be 2.5, maybe 3 laps with a bit of rain on track. As Ryan Leach's car looks a bit beaten up.
That is a battered Porsche. That's going to be limping for the rest of the race. I think that's had a big impact at the front. I wonder if that's a result of a wall or a car. But either way, that aero is going to hurt, and it's not going to be long before we see cars trying to get onto the back of him, I imagine. But looking at right now, he's got 15 seconds. He's got 15-second gap behind. So as long as it's not costing him, well, if it's costing him a second a lap, he'll be fine. He'll be able to hold it, because with only 12 minutes to go, and lap times being about a minute 22, 23 for your sort of midfield pack,
I'd say, 23, 24 midfield pack, then he should be fine. As long as he keeps it on track and avoids any further issues, because a car that beaten up, even a light touch could just send it over the edge.
Absolutely. And you say 23, 24, I think as a mid-pack driver, you should be doing 23s in these conditions as the fuel starts to burn down. I'm expecting to see our high-end pro drivers doing at least 22s. At least 22s, the top kind of 5 drivers, because that's just the pace that you can expect out of low fuel cars. But we say low fuel cars, all of that could change if the rain starts to fall, and nobody but Abranosa has a pit stop to fill. So I don't think Abranosa has enough time for us to say that it's a genius maneuver to hold it until the very last second and come out on wet tyres. But
it's not going to be wet enough. It's very light rain. It takes about 4 or 5 laps of light rain for it to even start getting greasy. So the only reason he's holding out here, I think, is just trying to run long. But sitting on board right now with Nard Cox, you could just see there the car does not look nice to drive. And even just having that quick look at Abranosa, his car is also not looking too pretty. So I'm not quite sure what the intention of running so long is in a stint. Maybe it's just because of the fact that he did compete in the Laguna Seca 6-hour endurance on Saturday, and he's just used to going long and preferred the feel of going longer on the tyres, and preferred the sort of feel of the car in that situation than 2 sprints. Who knows, maybe just thought it was the best way to get some free air time and try and jump a few people if he was able to just keep in the groove and keep pushing out laps.
Yeah, that groove really matters, I think. I know that after I got back in the car on Saturday, it was really hard to find the groove in the first couple of laps. It's a bit different if you're only in the pit for a minute rather than being out the car for 3 hours and going for a walk, but it definitely does play to it. But I think Abranosa maybe just hasn't felt the need to put a lot of fuel in early and said, I'm just going to splash and dash at the end. I don't know how practical that is when you have to change tyres anyway. You might as well fill up fuel, because in ACC it does not separate the time between you filling the fuel and changing the tyres. So you may as well fill up at least 30 seconds worth of fuel. It depends
on the settings.
So really?
It can be, I believe with these it's a 30-second mandatory, so it doesn't matter. But if you set, if the settings are that you don't have to have a mandatory pit stop time, then tyres take 30 seconds to change, and there's no refueling extra time on top of that, as it looks like a brilliant little switchback here as we just get a little bit of action going between Medema and Patrick Tractor. But he's gone very deep and not been able to pull it up. He had it all in the bag, but just pushed the braking point a little bit too far.
Yeah,
very unfortunate.
We saw this before from one of the Hondas. I was saying textbook maneuver, get to the inside, you still have to hit the apex. You can go in late, you can stay on the inside, but if you're on the inside, I think the big thing is to not feel pressure to try and brake later. In fact, you can almost brake earlier and just hold that inside line and push people towards the outside. I think the mistake that we're seeing there is just, I'm on the inside, I have to outbrake somebody. That's absolutely not the case into the Andretti hairpin. You have that inside line, all you have to do is hold it. And it's an easy mistake to make. Maybe we'll see that tic-tac car going for another one as there's contact at the bottom of the hairpin. I think that might be between the back marker.
It might be between 2. That's Frank Hopp and one other. Whether or not they were racing is another question. I think they were, because it was Haig just ahead at the time prior to when they were picked up on the overall. There was only 2 tenths between them, so that bit of contact that you spotted was indeed a battle for position.
That's unfortunate, but they seem to have kept it on the track, which is good. They did force one of those Audis to go a bit wide, take a pace of action. Are we going to see Medema go for a move? Is the toe on a Lexus enough on a BMW? Lexus notoriously quick in a straight line, but I don't know if it has the time to reach the top speed that it's so well known for here. This straight's not very long, but Medema looks like he's just got so much more grip at this stage of the race. That Lexus swirling about all over the place. Medema absolutely planted onto that inside curbing, where there's a nice little bit of camber to pull you around. Maybe not this lap, but getting ever closer. I think this could be a good fight coming up as we're riding on board with Walker down the back straight now.
Yeah, so Walker closing the gap to Dimitri here. 5th and 6th, this would be a battle for. 64's gone off at the back there. The leader's just gone past them. But yeah, I think Ryan Walker's suddenly got a lot of pace here. Patrick Vernier too, right on the back of Peter Vernier. I'm getting my own name confused. I just saw a P and instantly. Oh, it's because Patrick Tractor's right behind. That would be why. Two big battles here going on, or three big battles. We got Walker now trying to go around the outside, but the back markers are in the way. Can they get through cleanly? This is an awkward spot for him to go for a move. He might just have to sit behind here. What's going on? There's a little bit of ifs, buts, and maybes, and I think the back marker did aim to let him through. And it worked out in the end, but it was just a little bit. There were questions. It was doubtful on both sides. Neither really knew what they were doing, and although fortunately for everyone involved, it worked without incident and without contact, it did just drop Walker slightly off the back of Denoit.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier in the race. It's a really difficult place to let people by. You don't want to be going too wide because you'll end up in the gravel trap on the outside. If you're on the outside of that, it looks like Denoit just says, I'm going, get out of my way. And the back marker respectfully says, okay, I guess I will, but may lose a place for quite an aggressive move on a back marker there, I will say. But yeah, it's a difficult place to let the person behind you by. You don't want to back out too much because you want to keep your run, but equally you definitely don't want them going side by side through that left-hander. It's just too scary. So I think that the decision from the back marker was just made a little bit too late, perhaps, or the decision from the car behind to stick with another guy. Steve Parker, where have you come from? Who let him in the car? Big slide. Love to see it. Where's the Euro beat?
Well, unfortunately for us as viewers, I'd just like to move your attention to the top right of the screen again. It would have dried up in 30 minutes time from now, so sadly the race organisers put this one just a bit too early on the time frame that we haven't had a nice little rain shower midway through our race. But look at that for a move. Wow,
what a run out of that left-hander. Obviously just carried more apex speed, was a bit brave, a bit closer to that sausage curve. It gives you such a big run, and then you can dive down the inside of corkscrew like that. It is a beautiful move.
Well, that puts Walker now up to 5th. Dimitri relegated to 6th for the time being. But if you remember to what was mentioned earlier and what I was just drawing your attention towards, we should expect rain. Just a few spatters, but rain in the next minute.
Yeah, we'll see if it affects the grip level significantly, or if these if it affects them at all. It does look like Walker's run a bit wide there, but I doubt that's because of track conditions. That just looked like he got a bit untidy on the way in, a little bit late on the brakes perhaps, or bled off in a weird way. But does look like he has the pace on Denoit at the moment. Already starting to pull a bit of a gap. Denoit really needs to kind of pick it up and stay with him if he wants to get that place back. Whoa, there you go. They're both pushing really hard, dipping wheels into the gravel on the outside of turn 4 there. It's easy done. There's the rain.
Enough. Oh, there's the rain, just like that. And it looks like a significant amount.
That looks pretty wet.
That's not a little bit of nothing. That's quite a good splattering of rain. Now, I think if Abranosa jumps into the pits in this situation, he probably loses less time than everyone else did in the pits, because with rain, you're naturally going to be a bit more cautious. So we'll see at the end of this lap whether Abranosa does indeed pit, because, I mean, he's very limited. It's got to be this lap or the next one. Otherwise, he can't. And he's just going to get a penalty for not adhering to the sprint regulations.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 20 seconds to Morgan behind, but he is going to lose a few places here, possibly one to Vernier. We'll see if he loses a place to Alex Crawford, who's the next driver in class for him. But yeah, you're absolutely right. This is the perfect time to pit if you're going to do it, because everyone's moving a little bit slower, whether it's due to grip, whether it's due to confidence. You can't drive flat out as the conditions start to change. You are going to have to compromise your line a little bit. So if he's going to dip, it's going to have to be now or next lap. It looks like he's taking the line for it. Nope. He's saying, I'm staying out. Fine.
Oh, well, it's going to be a tight squeeze for one more lap after that. As interesting enough, we've got a yellow flag of 35 in the pits. As we also have a slow car of, I think that is 39. But yeah, we've got the rainfall then. So what are the track times saying then? We'll have to wait just to see what our leader says. Is Bartlett's been disqualified.
Is that for not serving the stop and go 30 from earlier?
I'm unsure. That seems fresh. So that's surely been more than 3 laps. But just in relation to lap time, 3 seconds slower now. This lap was Filippi compared to his last one.
126.1. So it's really affecting these cars.
I'm guessing that Abranosa has definitely saved himself about 4 seconds, maybe 5 to those around him by pitting this late. But at the same time, he's only got 2 minutes left on the timer. The pit takes about, what's the drive-through, 25 seconds, and then you've got the 30 seconds mandatory pit time. He's got damage, which I'm guessing he's not going to repair because there's no need to this late in the race. It's clearly not been enough to affect him. But he's actually off, and he's in the wall!
Big crash.
It's all gone wrong!
It looks like he's just gone straight on at corkscrew. He might only just have enough time to pit.
That is a severely damaged car. He should have pitted 1 lap earlier. He might not even be able to get back out in time now with a minute 30 left.
It's going to be close. Oh, that car is crabbing on that front right.
It's not turning.
Yeah, he's not going to have enough time to pit. We were talking about, maybe I think it's about 35 seconds down the pit lane, and you've got to sit still for 30 seconds. He's got to probably got to repair the damage. Is he just going to drive off an RCG? It just won't turn. He has to repair the damage. There is no way he has the time to repair the damage. It is a disaster for Abranosa. He started in 9th, but I think he's going to finish in last. I think he's just missed his braking point at the corkscrew. But we're about to find out. There's a big bump on this right-hand side that he might hit.
No, that's just no grip on the brakes. Just doesn't take into account the conditions, and with the damage already held from an earlier incident. Oh my gosh, that one's gonna hurt. If he'd only just pitted that 1 lap earlier.
Yeah,
I think that was the difference. Just trying to push it out for 1 more lap. Oh.
Racing sometimes is a game of ifs and buts. Is if I did this and then, if I did that then. But unfortunately, you've also got to live with the consequences of your actions. Hopefully, Abranosa gets out before that 30-second pit time ends. As Philippi not looking like they're holding back too much. We're looking at similar times to qualifying now as the low fuel kicks in. The difference, of course, being the track is not improving, it's getting worse. So all you've got to do now is just not make a mistake, as this will probably be coming on to the final lap. But it's looking super squirrely through that left-hander. We've seen a lot of people go off at the corkscrew. Nice 8-second gap. Mitchell probably pushing behind Philippi, thinking, I'd probably like to give it a little bit of respect out here as the conditions look. They're damp already on these dry tyres. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. The understeer is going to be all over the place. You can see the water ripping off the tyres.
He's just got 2 more corners to handle. The car ahead, he doesn't really care. He's got a big 8-second gap to Mitchell behind, who's also clearly just limping it back. I think that's probably what most of these drivers are going to do right now. The back marker as well says, I do not want another lap of this, please go past. And Philippi obliges and wins here, race 4 of Laguna Seca at Simsport Racing International's GT3 Sprint League. Regan Mitchell, a great 2nd place, and soon we see a little bit of a kerfuffle of cars coming out at the end here. There goes Sem Spenkelink in 3rd. We've got a few further down. Morgan, Veneer, Tractor, Medema. That's 9th to 12th. Here comes Nard Cox at the end with that extra damage, giving it a good old wave to the cameras. And Morgan, your silver class winner this time round. Let me just double check to see where he was in the standings. So he was 5th, and he was 35 points off the lead, so that puts him right up in the championship battle in the silver class now.
Yeah, Medema managed to get a good finish too, in 12th place, 3rd in class. I believe you said he was leading the silver classes into this race. Still managed to get a good recovery drive after the mistake earlier, so well done by them. And unsurprisingly, Friedrichsen in the Porsche just drove a bit of a quiet race for us, but leads the AM class over the line, so fantastic drive from Friedrichsen too. Finishes 19th overall, 1st in class. So there's been a couple of people made some just kind of quietly brilliant drives. I think Denoit is another good example of a driver that was just a bit quiet. Finished in 6th place though. Fantastic drive. All over the place. People just keeping it on track.
The question I want, and so, we were saying, there might not be drama because the rain came too late. Where's car 33? Nelson Abranosa. He dropped to 32nd in the end.
Ooh.
And he was running in 8th, looking at about a 14th, 15th place finish prior to that incident. Oh, that's a heartbreaker.
That really is a heartbreaker. Just got it wrong at the corkscrew. It's easy done, but it's even more disheartening when it's basically on the last lap of the race you're going to get. 33rd is a bit unfortunate as we're looking at the pile up into turn 1.
There's a lot of it going on
everywhere.
We didn't even see that at the start. Yeah, just brake checks and punts in the rear. We've got cars backwards, loads off the track. It's a proper car park out there. Blimey.
Oh, you love to see it. I mean, you hate to see it as a driver. You love to see it as a commentator. Something to talk about the whole time for sure. But that was absolute chaos as we ride on board with the 14th Red Hall.
They did a good job of avoiding it, to be fair. Just stuck to their outside line and, yeah, managed to sneak on through.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do to avoid carnage. I think that was the car of Van der Linden, car 14 Audi. Does a fantastic job of just keeping it on track.
Well, it looks like we've got two interested in an interview. We've got our first and second place from the pros, Luca Filippi and Regan Mitchell. So should we get them both in here?
Absolutely.
Oh, and Sam as well. The top three, they're all in. So yeah, let's drag them all through. Why not? Good evening, you guys. Welcome all. We've got Luca Filippi, Regan Mitchell, and Sam Spenklink now in the booth with us. Sorry, we've got. We'll start with Luca. So congratulations all on the race, but Luca looked like staying out and just popping in some laps while everyone else pitted around you seemed to do the trick. How did it feel on track?
Thank you first. It was a very, very stressful race. But yeah, I thought I might have more pace in the car, because before the pit stops I was behind Regan and Walker, I think it was, and I just couldn't take all the potential of the car, and I thought maybe I can get some good laps and be in front of Regan, and yeah, I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, were you worried with the rain at all right at the end there? It seemed like it gave everyone a little bit of a scare just with the final couple laps, especially because it didn't look, well, it looked like it might have just been a bit of light rain on the radar, but then it properly seemed to bucket it down quite quickly.
It wasn't that much rain, but with the dry tires, with the slicks, it got slippery as soon as the first raindrops appeared on the windscreen, so it's always kind of tricky and difficult to drive in those conditions.
Yeah, well, we'll move on to Regan now. So congratulations on the win. And Regan, it looked like you might have had a chance for the victory yourself. You and Luca obviously held up by Walker for a while, but once you did, I mean, once Luca had his moment and you slipped through, were you still also stuck behind him for a bit? I mean, he did have his issue, but once you got free, did you think that was your chance?
Yeah, I sort of had a feeling of I need to get past this Aston quite quick, because I knew Luca probably had more pace anyway, and then would just be straight on the back of me. So luckily he did have his mistake, and I was able to just drive after that. At the pit stops, it could have gone either way, whether to go a bit longer or pitting around the halfway mark. Once I saw the two BMWs pitting, I was like, right, I want to come out in front of them, so I had to go in basically the next lap, and then sort of just hope that if Luca carried on, which he did, he would have worse traffic than me, which I don't think he did, but it was still very close. Could have gone either way.
Yeah, it's unfortunately for you guys who came out the pits, it seemed like that's where all the traffic was, because I think Luca just had a load of clean air, only like one or two to pass, while you Sam and Nard were having to fight your way through the back markers, and it was those back markers that I think cost Sam and Nard in the end and got you that overcut.
Yeah, it's easy to think about, oh, what if I got past that back marker quicker, or what if I brake later going into the pit box or something like that, but you can't really, when you're deciding on the fly, you can't really do that after the fact.
Yeah. Were you fueled to go long then as well? Did you have that option available to you? Because I know you mentioned it, but
we've got about 3 more laps or so.
Okay. Right. Yeah. So do you always do that just to have the option available to you in case you feel like you have more pace?
Yeah. I'm not going to go into exactly why here, but yeah.
No, it's a tough track to overtake, so you can fully understand it. And Honda is a strong car around Laguna, so. Yeah, having the option available to either undercut or overcut is always a favourable advantage.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you again. And now Sam. So It was looking so good for you and Nard for a while. First and second, had clear air, had a lovely brick wall of Walker behind as well in that first part. But then after the pit stops, it just all seemed to go wrong.
Yeah, to be honest, this was always going to be a track of damage limitation for us. The BMW is well over a second slower than the Porsche here, so the rain was the only way that we could have like thrown some dirt into their faces. But luckily that was there during quali, so Nart and I got just ahead of Walker, and then we had a little bit of a nice gap coming up, but we weren't that much faster and only opened up a gap of I think 3 seconds or something. And then there was a massive wall of back markers fighting right in front of us, so it was either them going into the pits or us, and they were going like 3 wide or something, so we had to box both simultaneously, which went okay, I guess. Nart fucked up his pit stop a little bit, so I got ahead out of him, but as we were leaving the pits, also Alexis, I believe it was Denise Pope, was also leaving the pits simultaneously.
Yeah.
We were side by side, and then for whatever reasons he decided to fight us coming out of the pits and then stay ahead the entire lap, making us lose 2 or 3 seconds, and that was just ridiculous. And I'm not really sure why it happened, if she thought she was fighting us for position or something, because Denise is normally an experienced driver, and I really didn't expect that from her. So yeah, that lost us the position to Regan, I guess. Otherwise, I think we would have been ahead. But yeah, then again, no way we would have been doing the pace that Luca was doing, so he would have been ahead anyway. So maximum on the table was P2 today, and we got P3. So I think that's damage limitation.
Yeah, I have to ask, because it was my teammate, but after qualifying, when you saw a Nissan splitting you and Nard on the front row, what did you think of that?
Yeah, first I saw us being 1-2, I was like, well done Nard, 1-2, and then I was like, holy shit, what's going on? A Nissan right there, so that was awesome to see. I absolutely love that car. Well done to him. Shame couldn't hold it up in the dry, but yeah, that was kind of expected from him. I think he made a little bit of a mistake also in the first lap, but yeah, really cool to see that Nissan there out on front, and I'm not sure where he finished, but yeah, kudos to him.
Yeah, might be a bit of a wet demon in the future, or just like the damp track specialist, the Nissan. We'll have to keep an eye on that for now. If we can ever get just damp conditions for a whole race, it could be a bit of an overpowered car. But yeah, congratulations you three on the podium again. And I mean, it seems to be you three on a few occasions. Obviously, your teammate as well for Blue Sky Racing's hopping in, but there's the battle's definitely hotting up in the pro class now at the halfway point, so I'm sure you will be talking to you some more before the end of the season.
Yeah, I definitely hope so.
All right, well, have you got anything else to say, Dan? Anything else you want to ask if you're still here?
Nope, nothing to add from me. Just also congratulations from me for your respective finishes today. It was a really fun race to watch.
All right, well, on that note, I think it's probably going to be the end of the stream for us. Of course, if you want to get involved with anything here at Simsport Racing International, please do have a look at the box just underneath the YouTube channel. You have the Discord link that you can go and click to join us in the description. It also gives you the information for the next 3 races here in the GT3 League. We are currently, as they're also on track, you can see Monza, Donnington Park and Zandvoort every 2 weeks from today. We do currently have, I think, a maxed out field for the GT3 season, but there are always drivers that are dropping out, so you can surely get yourself involved with that if you wanted to. If GT4 is more your thing, that runs every other week on the opposite weeks of the GT3 League, and that is going to hit the halfway point at a track that you don't see very often anymore, Snetterton, which I also might be making my debut in the GT4 series there, so maybe a bit slower, maybe a bit different. You want to drive with the people you hear week in, week out here on Simsport Racing International, that could be the shout for you. If neither of them are your thing, but you like the Porsche Super Cups on Assetto Corsa Company Shone, you can go and drive that this Thursday. You will see the cars going around Spa-Francorchamps for the mid-season race. And those are 2 races, 20 minutes followed by 30 minutes. But if ACC isn't your thing and it's actually Race Room and the World Touring Car Championship, that runs every other Thursday opposite the Porsche Super Cup League, and it's Motorland Aragon, which I'm guessing is somewhere in Spain, but I'm not too aware of that one myself. But yeah, there's a lot going on here, and obviously we mentioned it a few times in the race itself, as we did just have round 1 of the Simsport Racing International Endurance Series at Laguna Seca, but the next one will be in about a month's time, and it's Bathurst Mount Panorama. What an event that's going to be. So if you do want to get involved with some longer distance, a 10-hour race there at Bathurst, please get yourselves into the Discord, and I'm sure you'll be in for a lovely time here with a great community. So I believe that's everything from us. We've just seen a massive little accident on stream to end it off between Wouter and Ryan. So that's where Ryan actually picked up all the damage, I'm guessing. But yeah, Dan, I think that's us for the night. So thank you from myself. Obviously, thank you to Tom Vandermeer behind bringing us the pictures of everything, and thank you to my co-commentator Daniel.
Thank you to you. Thank you to Tom. Thanks to everyone that stuck around to watch, and everyone that hopefully enjoyed the race today too.
That is all from us. Good night.
Good night.